if you become president of the United States, you will be the first female president. You're not running as a woman. You're not, emphasizing that necessarily. But how would you feel about being that historic first person if that's what happened?
Well, perhaps the way I felt when I became the first woman CEO to lead a Fortune 50 company. At that time, I actually, honestly, was quite unprepared for all the media attention that the historic first drew. Shame on me, I guess. But I'm sure what I would feel is I have a heavy responsibility now. And I have to execute that responsibility on behalf of everyone, men and women, Republicans and Democrats for that matter.
So in 2008, when I covered Hillary Clinton on the campaign trail, women would come up to her all the time, old, young, in between, and they would say with manifest emotion how excited they would be to be able to cast their vote for the first woman president. I've not seen that happen to you, but I'm sure it must, right?
Yes, it does.
Does that touch you in some way or not?
Of course it does.
Just enunciate how you feel about it.
I will tell you how it shows up. I have a lot of men who come up and say, I'm really excited about your candidacy, and they're excited because I'm not a politician. They're excited because I talk common sense. When women come up to me, they'll say all those same things, but they'll have a different look in their eye. Sometimes they'll have tears in their eyes.
So you mentioned the notion of the playing field not being level. There's some laws on the books and some court decisions that are intended to, federal laws, intended to try to level the playing field regarding gender. Some people, a lot of Democrats, would like to see more. Is there any area in which you think the national government, federal government, should do more to create a more level playing field on the issue of gender?
Yes, they should move to a meritocracy in the federal government instead of protecting seniority systems. Every federal government bureaucracy is a seniority system. Every union is a seniority system.
Benefits men who've been there longer.
That's right. It disadvantages women.
Any others? I'm not dismissing that one, but I'm just wondering.
Well, I think that's a huge one. It would have enormous ramifications. We've seen, by the way, when government overreaches to try and help women by, for example, mandating too much paid leave. We've seen in places like Chile or Spain or Europe where that backfires tremendously on women. Here's the thing. Here's an interesting statistic. Male-run companies receive $1.9 roughly billion in venture capital money from Silicon Valley. Women-owned companies receive $32 million.
What we call less.
A lot less. Government can't fix that. That's about attitude. Right. Or here's another interesting fact. 84% of women agree that a woman is just as capable of holding a senior executive position as a man. 43% of men agree with that statement. This is about attitude
and then
now.
Societal issues, and obviously no one thinks that problems like that necessarily. A lot of people would say there's no government role in that. But let me just button up that issue before we move on. Are there any other federal laws you'd like to see that would be aimed at dealing with any aspect of a lack of level playing field on gender?
I think most of the government action that should be contemplated, in my mind, would have two characteristics. One, it ought to be contemplated at the state level, not the federal level, because we're a very diverse country with very diverse economies, and one size never fits all. Second, I believe it's always important for the federal government, if it's going to intervene, to regulate or legislate the floor, not the ceiling, the minimum necessary, not the maximum necessary. Because when government, and it almost always does, when government overreaches and goes for the maximum, which is what Democrats always want to do, it always ends up backfiring. We see it in every conceivable case, including now with Obamacare.
We've had several waves of feminism in America. Is there anyone from any of those waves who you would cite as a hero?
Well, of course. Look, women
I would just ask you to cite someone specifically.
Well, Susan B. Anthony, Gloria Steinem, they're all heroes in their own way, because when someone challenges the status quo, that's heroic, even if I don't always agree with them. But I think what's happened is that heroism to challenge the status quo and to stand up and say, you know, women are equal to men and so we should have the same opportunities as men. What's happened is that's turned into a political ideology, and that political ideology is very specific. And so when women of the left tell me that I'm a threat to women's health, or tell me that I'm offensive as a candidate, That's not about women. That's about ideology.
So a lot of Republicans, and I believe you share this view, think that Democrats have, for craven political purposes, created this notion of a war on women, and that they've gotten away with it to some extent. I just try to see a big 30,000 feet macro analysis of politics, media, culture. Assuming that premise is correct, how have they gotten away with it from your point of view?
Well, I think they've gotten away with it because for too long we haven't taken them on. We've sort of let that narrative play out, and we shouldn't, and we can't.